Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Boswell, and I'm going to be talking about project-based learning versus problem-based learning. I am a math teacher, so I'm going to be looking at it from that perspective. Okay, if we begin, we've got our project-based learning, which involves teaching the curriculum through a project. This process, it requires a lot more time, a lot more work up front, but you see a lot better results from the students, a lot more engagement, and after you put in that time, you're able to use it year after year. It's important to begin with the end state in mind and then determine what benchmarks need to be met and schedule those out that will help students successfully be able to turn in that final project. One of the great things about project-based learning is it tends to be a bit more open-ended, which allows students to have more flexibility in how they demonstrate their understanding and kind of focus in the areas that they're interested a little bit more. So I think creativity really increases when we're looking at project-based learning. As we can see on the screen, here's an example of the process that you might go through as you're creating a project-based learning. You'd start off with assigning the groups. You're going to talk about the real-world problem that they're going to encounter, along with the parameters of what you want that final project to look like. And then, as we see down here where it says teaching, consultation, and benchmarks, you're going to want to have those benchmarks, make sure that the students are on the right path, and help prepare them for their final presentation. Next, we're going to look at a project-based activity in an Algebra 1 math classroom. This is going to be focused on solving systems of linear inequalities. So the overall goal is for students to be able to design their own business. The end state of this is that they will be able to graph a linear inequality to show how to maximize profits. Okay, they're going to go and they're going to research what the product or service is that they're going to provide. They're going to determine what is the cost to produce that service or that good, and then they have to determine what are they going to sell that for. They're going to need to research how much it's going to cost to lease a space to run their business out of, and they're going to, at the end, have to determine how many hours or units they will have to work or sell before making any profit. Again, they're going to create the graph, they're going to do this research, and at the end, they're going to present this information to the class. It's critical to create some benchmarks for the students to help guide them through this process and ensure that they're getting good numbers. And let's say that maybe their numbers are too far off. Maybe the price to produce the product and the price that they're selling the product at are too close together, and there's just not a way to make money from their standpoint, kind of helping guide them through that process. And also, as we're going through learning some of those different skills, like being able to graph those linear inequalities to be able to use to make educated decisions as a business owner. As we can see, this is very open-ended. Students have a lot of flexibility, and it's kind of neat as a teacher to be able to see how this unravels and how the students, what kind of careers they want to pick. It really helps get to know the students better. I personally believe that it kind of gives them a better idea of the real world and some of the skills they're going to need to understand to be successful in the real world, especially if they become business owners someday. Alright, the next topic that we're talking about is problem-based learning. And this is something that I'd be more likely to apply in my math classrooms more often just because of the time constraint and the amount of curriculum that we have. But pretty much it involves presenting complex problems that require students to determine essential information to solve the problem. So we start off, and we'll give some kind of prompt. What is the problem that we're having? And then usually it's going to be in pairs or in a group, maybe of 3 people. And the students, they need to reflect back and try to figure out what is the information that we need in order to solve these problems. Problem-based learning would be a great way to be able to review previous concepts and keep that current. And then finally, they learn and apply to solve the problem. At my school, in years past, they've done what they call Flashback Friday, which involves reviewing previous content that we don't want them to forget. I think the problem-based learning would be a great opportunity to help develop those problem-solving skills for the students, to not tell them, hey, this is our learning target and this is how you do it, and we want you to try it again. Having them work together in a group and recall that on their own. I think that's an important skill that we could build on at my school. Okay, one of the great things about problem-based learning is that it does not take as much time as a project-based learning, although it is not as open-ended either, so it doesn't create as much creativity in the students as you'd probably see in the project-based learning. So here's an example of a project-based learning activity involving systems of linear inequalities. I have taken the prompt from the project and created my own scenario, which students will have to read and create their own graph of a system of linear inequalities. And then I make an extension question off of that, which requires some critical thinking. So pretty much on this question we're looking at, you own your own massage therapy company, and pretty much you're charging $60 per hour for a massage. You're self-employed, so 30% of what you make will go to taxes. Every week you pay $200 for renting the business. Okay, and the most massages you can perform in a week are 30 because of the scheduling, and ultimately there's some prep work that goes on between the appointments that need to be done. So the student would want to graph the system of linear inequalities to determine how many massages they could perform in a week, or that they must perform in a week to make some sort of profit. And then the question goes on to ask them, basically their business is expanding, and they're looking at increasing all the way up to 45 appointments per week. However, they can't handle that. The most that they could do are 30 appointments a week. So they have to think about, how can I restructure my business in order to either accommodate the new people who will be joining my client list, or how would they want to handle that. Problem-based learning activities are a great way to increase engagement, really provide some purpose for students in class, and show them, hey, math is important. Here's how it applies to real life. And I think that's probably one of the complaints that a lot of students have these days. All right, moving on. We want to be able to compare and contrast project-based learning to problem-based learning. On the left, we could see where the project-based learning is unique. Basically, the curriculum is taught through projects. You have to start with the end state in mind with benchmarks. It's a lot of work to be able to create a project, but there's a big payoff, and you could see it with the students. It's a lot less work while the project is going on, because you're really taking on the role of more of a facilitator. It's definitely a longer time required, and it's a lot more open-ended. Students have the ability to be a lot more creative with it. Now, if we look at the problem-based learning, how that's unique and different from project-based learning is it's more to supplement instruction to reinforce concepts. Basically, you could develop these as you go, shorter time required, and it's one of the, I'd say the downfalls, I guess, is the topic is restricted a lot more. You could invoke that critical thinking in the students, but in the project they have the ability to have more control over what's happening there. And finally, where both of them come together, they're both active learning strategies. The students are doing, and like what we had learned about in this week's YouTube video that was included, was that 90% of students, or 90% of information will be retained by doing it, 10% will be retained by reading it, 20% by hearing it. So what that's telling me is, as a teacher, we need to figure out how can we change our practices to accommodate the students. The end goal is that each student is able to walk out of the class, they know what they're doing, they're able to retain the information, and if you're looking at 10 to 20% of information is retained from class, that's an ineffective structure, and we need to figure out how can we revise how we teach to really cater to our audience. With that said, here are my references. Thank you for your time, and have a good evening.